that'll be presented.
Okay.
It really is a simple step. You know what I need to do? I need to start my own business, teach people to shoot.
Okay, everybody get a lift. We have an announcement about a musical coming up.
So I just wanted to let everyone know we're trying to reach out a lot for this musical. The Red Cane Theater is new to town. They've been here for about a year, but this is their first Broadway musical that they're going to be doing. It's Grease. And it opens June 14th. We have 2 weekends scheduled right now. We will hopefully be doing 4 weekends. So you can call the number, if anyone wants to write it down, is 541-556-4524. And you can also go online and just search Red Cane Theater. You'll find
Can you say the name loudly and clearly? I'm not hearing it.
the Red Cane Theater.
How do you spell cane?
Oh, it's like a cane, like a walking cane. C-A-N-E.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's put on by the Phoenix Players is the name of the group. They basically rented out this building. It used to be an old Thai food place, I think. They scrubbed it and built the stage and everything. So they're a really hard-working group. And it's kind of neat because it's a really small setting. There's little tables. You get to come in. We have food, and at intermission and before the show, we actually come out and serve you in our Grease garb. Free popcorn. You can come to me after class or anytime within the next couple weeks with questions. Yeah?
What's your part?
I am Marty, the tart. It's a really fun show. Everyone's really talented. And it's lots of fun.
Awesome.
It's very good. Yes. Tickets are $18. Free popcorn for the whole show. But if you come in groups of 10 or larger, there's a discount. It kind of depends. We can talk to you about it and figure something out. But if you call the number, the 541-556-4524, she can work through. Amanda is the one who deals with all of that stuff. She can work through any.
What about the meal? Tomato meal, is that included in the price? Or?
It's not. But prices are very reasonable. There's going to be, because it's kind of like a drive-in setting, there are going to be old car seats in the front row. So there's pizza and ice cream and stuff like that.
Is that up on River Road?
It's not. It's over, the address. It's 11th and Chambers.
Oh, Chambers, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so right over in Eugene.
What was the date again? I forgot.
June 14th through the 23rd at the moment. We'll most likely be having 2 more weekends. But I'll be back there after class. Definitely come to me. I have handouts, so if you want a handout, I can give you one after class.
That's the Red Cane Theater.
The Red Cane Theater.
RedCaneTheater.com.
It's kind of a weird site. It's
Google
on here,
Red
though.
Cane Theater.
Yeah. Google Red Cane Theater in Eugene, and you'll find it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Shane Todd, who will be questioning the entire legitimacy of morality.
And you're only giving him 15 minutes?
So in other words, this class is a complete waste of time. So we need to clip that to the top of your t-shirt there, or on your, maybe on your thing there actually.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Let's
pocket.
right there. Yeah, I'll do it later.
Stuff this in your pocket there.
Okay.
We believe in you, Shane.
Okay. So let me first start off by explaining a little about myself, because I feel it's important to know where a person is coming from when you try to understand their perspective. I don't really believe in these argumentative, persuasive type of essays or lectures personally. To me, it's not really in my interest to stand up here and try and convince others how to think, regardless of any data that I might have to support what I believe. It's just people have their own data supporting their own perspectives, and I find that valid whether I understand them or not. So, if I could just coast through life without ever having to talk about my beliefs or my experiences, that would just suit me just fine. But I can't. I have to, express them in some way in order to get a grade in this class and just to really relate to people in general. So that's where we are, and I'm sure that's just kind of a natural thing we can all understand at a base level. Despite that, I will acknowledge that, in attempting to convey my experiences and my beliefs, I do gain a greater understanding of them. But it comes at the cost of them being potentially misinterpreted. So there's always that risk. And that's just kind of the disclaimer I want to throw out there. So that said, I have to be up here to do something. And I originally planned to discuss the detrimental effects of modern medicine. But like I said, I can't really bring myself to argue any one perspective to be applied universally, no matter how detailed or specific that perspective may be, in specific individuals or specific circumstances. It just, I just can't bring myself to do that. So, as Professor Bardot was saying, I know this is an applied ethics class, but I'm going to be breaching into some normative ethics and meta-ethical territory because I believe, just because it's kind of, how do I say this? I guess all too often important pieces of information get left out when you study something in pieces and not as a whole. For example, if you study a tree and you study only the leaf of that tree, you don't necessarily understand how it relates to the rest of that tree. So in order to really get an understanding of how that tree functions, you have to study the tree as a whole, the roots, the soil around it, and the environment that's in. Anyone who was in environmental politics last term with me will understand what I'm talking about. So that's why I'm delving into the meta-ethical and normative ethics categories. And as one final disclaimer, I am going to mention God in a moment, so if you're at all religious, do whatever you need to do, prepare yourself for that. It's not going to be it's nothing. To me, it's hard, there's no offensive nature in it at all. I'm simply going to be bringing it up as a thing. So here we go. There's nothingness, there's the infinite, there's God, there's objectivity. These are all words representing concepts which we cannot explicitly define. Our inability to define them, in fact, is really one of their defining characteristics. So I believe it's our inability to comprehend these concepts that's kind of at the root of a lot of the conflicts and miscommunication in just our world. And these concepts have other things in common too. They can't be measured, they can't be judged, and generally speaking, they can't be in any way observed. So if you were to observe them, they immediately lose all of their transcendental properties. So this is what causes a lot of this discord in the logical mind, because if these things can't be observed, how can they be said to even exist? And our entire reality is based on the idea that these concepts exist. So how does this apply to things we discussed in class? Well, let me start by kind of explaining what brought me to consider this whole thing as a topic. Last week in class, we talked about vegetarianism and animal cruelty. And near the end of the class, Professor Bardot posed a question which kind of stuck with me. I don't know if anyone else really, if it stuck with them either, but it was pretty simple. It was easy to kind of go over people's heads, but for me, it kind of stuck out. And it was, aren't we morally obligated to do something about animal cruelty? And this is interesting because while I think we're all morally against animal cruelty, how far are we willing to go to prevent it? As someone who does eat meat, I do what I can to buy organic, free-range produce and beef, etc. But is that enough? If I know something is going on that's morally wrong, what's my obligation there? What's my directive to do something about that? So that's just one thing that I thought about, and there was really no answer to that. I mean, You take into account a lot of different psychological factors, socioeconomic factors, what's acceptable by our society and what laws are in place, et cetera. And so morality in that sense kind of comes down to weighing the risks and benefits of something. And so, so even though we may be faced with these moral questions, what kind of good are they if we don't do anything about them? So I also read Professor Bardell's paper, Rethinking Diversity. Did you guys all read that? I was on Moodle. I don't know.
Assigned mandatory
Hope
reading.
so, it'll be on the test.
Yeah, there you go. Another reason. Okay, so I read that, and I agree with the refocusing of diversity on ideas and that inquiry rather than ethnicity or even culture. I'd also like to point out the importance of context, because who decides what is academically excellent or challenging? Who's to say that one piece of academia is or won't be significant to one person just because it's not significant to another? So, or to put it another way, I mean, who's to say what's worth knowing? And I think this might kind of play on what Zach's going to be talking about on Thursday a little bit, but I can understand the challenging the idea that we're forcing certain material to be learned in classrooms or in education, even though it may not be actually considered to be an intellectual piece. But maybe it's just one of those things that someone hasn't quite derived a real meaning from yet. You have to keep sharing those kinds of things, maybe in hopes that someone will be inspired greatly by it. And so to deny people that opportunity for inspiration to come about, is that moral? And another thing that baffles me a little bit is this idea that you can maximize good and minimize bad somehow by figuring out what is moral, and by figuring this out and acting upon it, that you're going to end up with a society that is mostly right and least amount wrong, or mostly good and least amount bad, or has the greatest amount of happiness and the least amount of despair. And I bring that up because there's a moral concept called utilitarianism, which is basically saying that whatever's moral is whatever maximizes happiness overall. And so, in a sense, this kind of goes along against certain things that have been discovered in scientific fields. Basically, the one that I would give an example of is it's counter to the second law of thermodynamics. The second law of thermodynamics states that sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Okay, basically, the second law of thermodynamics states that we're moving ever towards increasing entropy, and depending on how you view that could translate to misery. I think a lot of people kind of do, but maybe I'm being presumptuous there. Chaos, in other words, that you can't that the order of things is constantly moving towards disorder and chaos. So you might say that we're kind of moving along an ever-increasing path of misery. And I know that sounds like kind of a feudalistic idea, and in a way you could say that my general philosophy is very feudalistic. But despite that, I know that we still strive towards these ideals. And that's the thing that most interests me, is that even though knowing kind of our own fate in a lot of things, of course the biggest one being our mortality, we still strive towards this ideal, some kind of goodness, and thinking that we can actually achieve it. And so those are the questions that really are the things that I personally take away from this class. Those are the questions that brought up for me, and that I'm not really here to have an answer for, but those are what I like to discuss. Those are what I like to hear other people's opinions about, and even though I don't think it really will change anything, as per my own kind of philosophy, it's I don't know, it's that exchange that's important, rather than, I guess, the actual result. It's the process is what I find most important about it. So I hope to have more, but that's really all I have to present now. And really hoping on kind of fielding the questions, hoping to get other people's responses and seeing how we can respond to them.
I'll start out of the gate here.
Okay.
Hey, over on the other side of the table, you guys. Thanks, distracting. There's a book called The Rational Optimist, which talks about how if you look at life as a hunter-gatherer, we may look back at the time and sort of see it as nostalgic and say, oh, people lived close to the land and they communed with the trees and they didn't have all the stress of getting up and having to go to work and their boss breathing down their neck and worrying about paying the mortgage and paying their taxes and getting their kids off to soccer practice and yada, yada, yada. And like life right now seems really stressful, and people look back at that time and they're thinking, well, I just sort of be sitting under a tree someplace, maybe, playing my little wooden pipe or something. Whereas if you look at the realities of life in hunter-gatherer society, it was very tough. The average age was 30 years old. People died of preventable diseases. If you fell and broke your leg or got a cavity, you can't go to the dentist, and you end up with like an infected tooth, and it's extremely painful. You get your friend to pull out with a piece of twine or a rock. You end up being crippled for the rest of your life because you slipped and broke your leg, and nobody knows how to set your leg right. So all these things would go on, or people with diseases like insulin resistance, diabetes, you're just a goner. Women often died in childbirth because there's not modern medical facilities. And so you look at life today, we got air conditioning, which we're enjoying right now. Now it's a little warm outside. You can turn on a light at night and do stuff at night, whereas before you had to squint over a candle. And so there's all these things that enrich our lives. You can have a lifestyle that the kings of old would have yearned to have. You can fly across the globe in an airplane. You can get on the internet and have access to a huge corpus of knowledge. And so I look at that, and I look to the future, and I see even better things in store. And it seems to me that although the second law of thermodynamics does say in a closed system, things tend to be less organized and run out of energy and so on. And the universe is sort of winding down on a large scale and losing usable energy. If you look at humanity on planet Earth, and civilization, we're becoming increasingly orderly and powerful and peaceful over time. And the future looks bright to me. So what would you say about that?
I would say, in what context are you basing that off of? certainly in some ways you could say that we're more orderly, but in other ways I would say we're far more dysfunctional. And I mean, I agree. I understand what you're getting at, but I suppose what I would say is, particularly with modern inventions and things like that, they're definitely a luxury. However, there's a certain amount of fulfillment that comes from being able to produce your own light if you need it, or your own warmth. It makes it that much more fulfilling to you. And so it does allow you to maybe fulfill other areas of your life by not having to worry about doing those things. However, it just seems to me that you're just replacing one thing for another. So
Well, I think about like washing my clothes. Like I don't have to like get some soap and go down to the stream or have my wife do it, right? As we in olden times, right? Division of labor, women do the washing. They go down to the stream, they get the washboard and some kind of like lye or something, and they're scrubbing on the washboard. And now, like you do your laundry, even like a single bachelor can take his dirty socks and clothes and throw them in the washer and dump in some soap, press the button, come back, it's all nice and clean. You can hang it in the clothesline, throw it in the dryer. And then you can free up all that time that you used to spend for manual labor to do something else that increases human welfare and human knowledge, or just goof off.
yeah, but I think that also depreciates the value of those clothes because, and I'm not going to say this is for everybody, but I definitely know a lot of people who don't give a crap about their belongings. And I think it has to do with a lot because of the availability of such things. If it wasn't so easily for us to go out and get clothes for as cheap as we do, we might take a lot better care of them, and we might, it's like washing. Okay, again, it's kind of distracting. That was kind of distracting a little bit, but again, for washing machines and things, because it makes it so easy to clean them and things, I don't know, that the mentality of it is we lose the appreciation for those things because we feel like, oh, it's just we can throw it in the wash, there's no big deal. If they get messed up or they get too badly beat up for us or just decay over time, we'll just go out and get some more. And I don't know, I know people on both sides who take great care of their belongings and have a lot of appreciation for the things that they have, and I know people who don't, and they just waste away their money and what I'd honestly say they're a drain on society. Don't ask me why I'm friends with these people, but it's true. So it kind of goes either way. Kate?
So I would say I generally do agree with you. I mean, I have my beliefs, and even though sometimes it's hard to hear a belief that's so different than yours just because you don't understand it and you can't wrap your head around it. It doesn't mean that I don't appreciate that there's obviously a reason why those people feel the way that they do. And I would never want to put my beliefs on anybody, especially in some sort of mass way. I'm glad that that's not my responsibility. It would be wonderful if we could, I don't like to choose sides because I can often sort of see a reason for both or several sides of an argument. So I agree with you in that, but also to respond to what you said about the hunter-gatherer societies. In some ways, I can see how people are very romantic when they think about, the olden times and things like that, and when things were simpler. And it's not the wood flute playing, you're kind of, obviously you're simplifying it a bit, and it seems like you're making it sound like there would be less stress, but when I think about that, I think about values, and you're talking about possessions and people not giving a crap about their possessions because it's disposable, disposable culture. And so when I think about a hunter-gatherer society, even though I'm a vegetarian, maybe I'd gather plants. I think that you would have real problems, like that tooth that you have to pull out. Everything that you do would be pretty would be more significant anyway than the vending machine doesn't have any Snickers. Like it would be a real issue that you'd be facing. And I think that the more things that we acquire and the more disposable things that we acquire that we don't make ourselves, you are sort of distanced from nature, and that's assuming that that is something that's better. That's an assumption that I'm making, that it's important to value the things around you. So that's something that's sort of inherent in the argument I'm making, I suppose, or the way I see things. That I think it is better for us to appreciate the things around us. I used to live in a small apartment that I completely paid for. I had maybe $200 in debt ever, and I had very few things. But it was very simple. It was a lot simpler, and I did most things myself. I tried to anyway, and then obviously bought.
Right.
But I didn't buy a lot of clothes. I kind of just, and things were simpler. And I think having a lot of things and placing your value on things like your clothes being clean and how you look is distracting. If you're out in the woods, or if we just put our values in different things, we wouldn't even have to wash your clothes. Maybe you shouldn't even have to wear clothes.
Right. All right, thanks, Kate. Evan, you had your hand up next.
When you reference the second law of thermodynamics, that only applies to a closed system where absolutely no energy can enter or escape. The universe is not a closed system. That's why life exists.
No,
That's why it's the universe. The universe is everything, therefore everything in the universe is a closed system.
I thought energy was never.
New evidence that we have with a multiverse, the universe is part of a cluster of interlocking.
But what I'm saying is that if your argument was right, not only would our sense of morality be degrading, it would be on a much larger scale than that. We would, random human beings would just kind of be withering away into the ether. And I'm talking on a physical, cellular level. Life is, just the biology of our life is incredibly complex. Billions and billions of years, billions of Mother Nature's errors going wrong. And yet life is still progressing. That your thoughts that you're having, they're incredibly complex. I can guarantee you probably weren't thinking about this when you were 2 years old or even in high school.
Right.
I certainly wasn't. So your complexity of thinking is progressing. It's not, we're not getting stupider, we're getting smarter.
Yeah, but I'm not quite sure my thoughts are becoming more orderly. To be honest, I mean, the more I think, the more it breaks down what I know.
Well, that's just because you have that volume of information, and information is increasing, but how do you need to find ways to organize all that. But I think we are getting more complex.
There's no doubt about that, but I don't think that's mutually exclusive with order or chaos, necessarily. I think something can be very complex and still be orderly, and something can be very complex and still be very chaotic.
Yeah.
So that would be my counter to that, but not necessarily a counter necessarily either. I would have to deliberate a little on what you're saying. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Zach, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. I mean, this is kind of an epistemological crisis.
Yeah, you know me.
But I agree with your assertion that the commonly held belief that we're advancing towards something is a bit frequent. I think the common error people make is a lack of definition in terms. And I just want to make sure I understood your point. You're saying that as we progress towards X, Y, and Z, which frequently that blank is filled in by a life of ease, and where most things that are tedious are done for us or something like that, that we lose a little bit of our connection to the world, that we lose a little bit of what it means to be a person.
I think, yeah, maybe. In a sense, yeah, that is kind of what I'm saying. I guess to clarify more, I guess we're so focused, I think, on what we want our destination to be that we, I hate to use that old term, but it is the journey, not the destination.
Right, I can't help but think of the perfect future where something eats for us, shits for us, screws our girlfriend for us, washes our clothes, drives our car. What are we going to be left but, some kind of gadget that sits there as an excuse for all of the other machines to exist at that point?
Right. My current philosophy is that the ends never justify the means, that the means should be the ends.
Right.
So, Matt.
So Buddha walks into a bar. The bartender says, "Can I get you?" He says, "Why don't you just make me one with everything?"
Love that.
On the life of bees, I would say that the neat thing about the modern world is that you have choices. You can go off and join a hippie commune and live close to nature and grow your own organic vegetables and spend the whole day meditating. And then if something happens, like you break your leg, or you get a cavity, you can go to a modern hospital and be patched up, and you can go back to your commune. And that's options that people didn't have before. And if you're all stressed out by the rat race, again, there's ways you can like get rid of your possessions, join the Peace Corps, and then you can fly, to another part of the world where people are having a tough time at it and actually help people. And so because of modern technology and modern conveniences, all those things are possible. And I think what will people do in the future when your manual labor and all the sort of niggling things you have to do every day are taken care of by machines? Well, higher level things, more thinking, more creating art, more scientific investigation, more enjoying relationships you have with other people, more meeting new people, having interesting experiences, maybe more communing with nature. That's what I see in store, and I see that mechanization is only going to help humanity along the path, and we'll see the similar trajectory.
I think my response to that would be that in any kind of lifestyle, whether it be hunter or gatherer or in our current society, there's going to be stressors, and that if there are more than one possible choice, if you're in our current society and you have the choice to go join a Peace Corps or a hippie commune or just stay in our American capitalist system, that choice itself creates more stress upon you. And then once you decide to make your choice, you still have that added stress. Whereas if you're in that hunter-gatherer society and you don't have those choices, you only have the stress of that hunter-gathering society.
Choice is stressful in itself.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's my main point.
I'm going to get Leslie first real quick.
Okay, so did you say that you like to hear other people's opinions and views, but they won't have any effect on your own, those won't change?
Not necessarily. It's...
So like you knowing it's not going to change.
Because that was
the
a very
world.
superior position, and I was wondering if I had heard that correctly, because we have to leave ourselves open. If we respect other people's views and opinions, we have to be able to say part of that respect is to allow their views and opinions to influence our views and opinions and have room for change. So I wanted to hear if I had heard you correctly.
No, well, you bring up something interesting. I try not to really hold on to any one perspective, and that might be considered a perspective in itself. But, indeed, there are issues where I'm really not sure what I understand different viewpoints on it so well that I'm really not sure which one I'm on or which one I side with. But I tend to think of any issue or any topic, knowledge, whatever, as kind of just like this giant ball that we're all looking at from somewhere on the outskirts of it. And we can only see so much of it. And that's our perspective, that's our view of that issue or that topic. And it's impossible to be on any area, any side of that ball and be able to see all of it. At best, you'll only ever be able to see half of it. And so you definitely need other people's perspectives in order to get all of the information, to get all of what makes up that ball of knowledge. And even still, that knowledge is changing too. It's constantly changing. So you'll never really know everything about it at any given time. That's just kind of my own way of understanding it. So I always like to hear what other people are seeing. What they're seeing on the other side of that ball, and just to gain a better understanding of that issue. And I don't know. I really just try not to have an opinion on anything until I have as much information as possible. But even then, I know that there's things that I'm missing. So again, it goes back to that kind of feudalistic idea. But I I have to at least acknowledge that there's some futility in what I'm doing, but that doesn't necessarily stop me from doing what I'm doing. And again, that was what I found most interesting about covering this kind of topic, is that we still do these things even when we know that there's probably no point in doing them.
Seems
So-
irrational.
It does. It does. It's totally irrational, and it goes against all logic and reason. But I don't know. I see it all the time, and everyone knows it, at least from what I can see. So, go ahead, Zach. You had it hand up.
Isn't it also primarily a semiotics problem? I mean, what you're saying is your idea of a thing is not that thing, right? I mean,
That's true, too.
Well, yeah, and it's a symbol you create to represent that thing. I mean, I don't know what's happening in Shane's head. I never can. I can just create my idea of Shane's mind, right? Or Kate's mind, or the sun, or anything. I can only create symbols that represent a greater truth.
Mhm.
Is that kind of what you're getting at?
That's exactly it too. I mean, words are all they are symbols of a concept which we have no other way of expressing except through words. But those words, again, it goes back to context, how people use them. It changes, especially with a lot of adjectives that have very emotional responses. Things that aren't absolute, like I don't know, can't think of, but yeah, I mean, that means something. That means something that we don't. It's a feeling.
Yeah, I can't give you a handful of love,
Mhm.
or happiness, or
Right.
satisfaction.
Things that can't be measured like that. It's like that's,
Maybe
and a lot of, and a lot of what we express is really only in comparison to something else which has no definition.
Right.
So it's everything is abstract that way. It's very,
It's a very existentialist.
yeah,
The Matrix has you.
I know, dude. It had ever since that movie came out, man. Go ahead, Evan.
Have you ever taken History 205? I think
No.
knowledge. He teaches it really
Oh,
good.
philosophy too, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, like I said at the beginning of class, that when I had a better understanding of what this class was going to be like, I was like, all right, I probably should have taken this other class. But I tried to go with it. I still couldn't quite get into the whole, like I said, the whole applied ethics thing without coming back to this sort of stuff. But I try to.
I'd say, like what you were saying earlier about everything seems concrete. Knowledge is based on the concrete facts of objective reality to the evidence of the senses. And so, there's certain concepts like love which are extremely abstract and represent different things in different contexts, but there are other concepts which are a lot more concrete and determinate, which we use to communicate with others and create all the things we see around us and work together to common purpose.
Right.
So just because some concepts are vague and intangible doesn't mean that all language is intangible or that we can't communicate meaningfully and so on.
And well, one last thing I'd like to point out there, and I'll get to Matt too.
You got 2 minutes.
All right. Just one thing is, consensus is not objectivity. So
I agree with that.
there's always that kind of problem. And I guess I'll let Matt have the last word here.
So haven't you ever just gotten in an argument with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your partner and you just know you're right? I mean, you're so objective of striving for objective, but you never had one where you just know you're right? Isn't that a human experience?
Man, you're bringing up something I can't even get into there.
Okay, thanks, James.
Oh, yeah. I'll walk away with this.
Yeah.
Oh, and you take over that? Can I give me your papers? Oh, like you can send it to me online if you have a hard copy.